Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. We're going to be discussing the Cowboys. I don't think I've done I've done one live stream on Rugby League previously, but it was more trying to follow a state of origin game, and I think the NRL took it down anyway. So a lot of those who follow my channel may not realise that I'm an avid supporter of the North Queensland Cowboys, who play in the National Rugby League here in Australia. One of the football codes, Rugby League, as separate from AFL, Aussie rules. And North Queensland Cowboys, based in North Queensland, which is the northernmost NRL team in Australia. And I'm joined by Matt Gibb, who's actually, or was, more northern than me when I first knew him. How's it going, Matt?
Yeah, well, thank you. And yes, all I'll say is that Cairns is a very, very lovely spot and one that is a great breeding ground for some good sporting talent.
Yes, and I grew up in Ingham, which supplied Sam Bacco to the Rugby League, and a few other talents. But yes, is much smaller than Cairns, so isn't anywhere near as well known. But now you're further south than me.
Yes,
earning a living.
Unfortunately, I live in the great city of Sydney, which is well known for its great beaches and cold weather. So it's not a bad place to live. But I think my heart's still in North Queensland.
Yeah, the heart of enemy territory when you're a Queenslander.
Absolutely.
So, how long you been following the Cowboys? Because you're a little bit younger than me.
Only a few years. Look, I've probably been following them for at least since the year 2000. Anyway.
Yeah.
I know growing up in Cairns for a long time, the only club we could support was the Brisbane Broncos, and so yes. I always grew up with an affinity.
To be a Queenslander.
Yes. So I always grew up with an affinity for them. I very much learned to love all things Queensland and lived through the eras when New South Wales just dominated. It seemed like in the late 90s and early 2000s, we couldn't win a state of origin game. Queenslanders didn't, there were no good Queensland players except for one or two, and so it just, it was a bit of a hard time to be a Queenslander. And then, we went through our own 8-year winning streak and we won 14 out of 15 years in a row. And it was great.
And g'day to little Gazman and Kevin joining to listen to this. So I started, I was reading in the Townsville Bulletin, which we used to get every day, about this team that could be based in Townsville. This is back in 1994. I started hearing about it. And so, I immediately switched from the Broncos, who I was only half-heartedly connected to simply because they were a Queensland team. But now that North Queensland had its own team, right, I'm really committed to the Rugby League. That the New South Wales Rugby League, I think, or ARL. I can't remember what they were labelled at that stage. In 1995. I believe it was
ARL.
Yes, ARL probably by that stage. Yeah, and I've been passionately following the Cowboys ever since. But unfortunately, I had to wait 20 years before they won a grand final. That was a painful process, but I was very pleased that they won the grand final on my birthday in 2015, which was the best birthday present I've ever gotten. So exciting. And I was we played the Broncos. I watched it with a Broncos supporter. Who was very gracious in having lost. He was pleased that we won, I think. I've watched the game numerous times since. It's quite an exciting final 20 minutes.
It's a great 20 minutes. I think that drop catch will probably forever haunt Ben Hunt, especially now that he's gone to the Dragons and has no hope of ever winning a premiership there. So,
yes, but we can love Ben Hunt for helping us in the Origin. Stealing that ball off Nathan Cleary trying to chip over the top, managing to. Oops, my internet might play up occasionally. I don't have the best internet. Yeah. So we've got a lot of things that we want to talk about. But as Christians, we want to talk about that. That's very important to both of us. And you've had some experience with some Parramatta. I think you worked for Parramatta or knew some people, knew Parramatta players.
So I never actually, I never worked for them or anything, but I taught at a Christian school, the Christian school that Tim Mannah came from. And so he never came to the school, but there were lots of teachers there who knew him and spoke glowingly of him. My father-in-law is connected to the Mannah family as well, through some of the things that he does. And so, there is some connection there. Unfortunately, he is also a Blues supporter, my father-in-law, but, I won't hold that against him.
Yeah, you can't help where you're born, can you?
He's also American, but I can't hold that against him either, so.
Yes, well, originally your parents were.
Yes, that's very true.
So yeah, you were telling me that Tim Mannah's a committed Christian.
Yeah, he's a lovely Christian man. He and has really made a career for himself outside of footy as well. He studied management and went on to manage some other players, I believe, in the NRL. But his family is also committed Christians, attend church on a regular basis, and so I know that there are a few others like him scattered around the league. Although off the top of my head, I couldn't necessarily tell you who they were or who they played for or anything like that. But there's a few out there, and I know that there have been many that have been blessed by Tim's testimony and others as well.
And of course, we're recording this just after the Super Bowl. So any of our listeners, any of the viewers who are Americans or follow the NFL, I think Kansas City Chiefs might have won. I think I have a vague idea. Something like that happened.
They did, and apparently both quarterbacks were also committed Christians as well. So there you go.
Yes, I have heard that. Ray Comfort recently did a video on one of the quarterbacks. Fascinating stuff. I don't follow NFL very closely at all. It holds very little interest for me. But it might be interesting to note, since I brought up the American connection, since Super Bowl happened today, that the NRL is launching the season. We've taken 2 games over to Las Vegas in America to try and tap into the American market, try and grow the rugby league, followers, the rugby league community globally. So that might be interesting to people who are listening to this, to see how the push to grow rugby league in America goes.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously Australians will know it because Allegiant Stadium is where the Super Bowl was played. So they will know it from that, those that sat there and watched all 17 hours of it this morning, or however long the game went for. And then So they will know it for that. But I think it'll be a bigger eye-opener to Americans that have never seen the sport, or that have only ever seen highlights of rugby league. The NRL's released a video by Russell Crowe as well. It's about a 5-minute long video just explaining the rules, which, if I mean, my only criticism of it was there's too much South Sydney footage in there, but I suppose that's to be expected with Russell Crowe narrating, isn't it?
You ask Russell Crowe to do it, of course there's going to be South Sydney.
Of course. But I think it's a great way to introduce fans to the game, casual fans to the game, getting Russell Crowe to narrate it and explain what's going on. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how the Americans gravitate towards the game. That's for sure.
Here we go. That's a very concerning looking bot. Oh, that's because it's on Twitch. I will ignore it then. So let's get back to the Cowboys. So there were a few things that interested me. I was looking at some of the videos, and I just want to play an interview of our two new captains. So these are players for the Cowboys. And they've proven to be great players within the club. They are leaders in their own right, without being acknowledged as captains, but they've been offered the captaincy to give them a little bit of time to adjust, to grow into it, with the support of the captains that we had last year. So we have co-captains, one from the forwards and one from the backs, and sort of helping cover the two main aspects, attack and defense. So for those who don't follow rugby league, we don't change our team whether we're in attack or defense. You pretty much play the whole game. You do have a couple of players that can come on and off the bench during the game so that players might get a rest, but it's very different to NFL in that way. That you've got forwards who are pretty much the main line of defense and pushing, but they also push the ball forward. And then the backs, similar to like running backs and the kickers and stuff, sort of in the NFL, that's your main line of attack, really. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's one simple way to understand it. So these two new captains.
Try vibes. Anytime, try vibes. Don't just.
So we'll wait till this ad finishes, and then we'll listen to the two new captains.
Cotter, Tom Dearden, newest captains of the North Queensland Toyota Cowboys. Boys, congratulations.
Oh, great. Try again. I bet you it'll play the ad again. Oh, a different ad.
But I mean,
Matt,
can't forget that face, though.
No, Matty Bowen, one of our previous legends.
Civil Safety Online
too.
Save time and money while updating your certificates online.
He actually went to school at Abagari College, which is west of Ingham, and my sister was working in the kitchen when he was a student there. So there's a bit of a slight Ingham connection. So good to know that there's a Cairns connection too.
Online. Search Civil Safety's online refreshers and get site ready in the way it works for you.
Attempt number 2.
Ruben Cotter, Tom Dearden, newest captains of the North Queensland Toyota Cowboys. Boys, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rubes, you're the old boy. I'll start with you first. Proud of North Queenslander as it gets. Been here your whole life. Born in Mackay. Serena Crocs Jr. What's it mean to you to be captain of the North Queensland Cowboys?
Yeah, it's obviously a massive privilege, a massive honour. Supported this club since I could remember. I played all my footy here in North Queensland. Very proud just to be captaining alongside Tommy Dearden, also from Mackay down that way. So, yeah, it means a lot to me, and I'm just excited to get started.
Tommy, you moved around a little bit, but North Queensland's been a big part of your life. Consider yourself a North Queenslander. What's this gig mean to you?
Yeah, it means everything. It's a great honour to be able to be captain of the Cowboys. I supported the club growing up as well, and I played all my junior footy in the North Queensland region. So it's a great honour to be able to represent this region and to be able to be the captain of the Cowboys.
Rubes, we'll dive back a little bit. 2016, you move up here. I think I'm right here. You got one game of 20s in.
Yeah, one game. Yeah.
You miss all the 16. Well, besides one game, miss all the 17, all of 18. If you can look back now to then, and then now moving forward to your captain of this club, you play for Queensland, play for Australia. How's that make you feel?
Yeah, it's obviously very special. If you told me back then, in 6 years' time, you would have accomplished, playing for your state, playing for your country, and now.
And we've got to discuss how Toddy Payton saw him as a forward. He was a hooker, and he was competing with Granville for the hooker spot. But Todd Payton saw in him the potential for being a forward, and he's been just incredible. Like the energy, the work that he gets through in terms of being a forward. He talks later in this about developing his ball playing skills, which I think, well, I would have thought you already had that as a hooker, and then that topic doesn't come up. But you've been a hooker. But I guess, the way you play the game as a forward and a hooker is different. So probably a different set of ball playing skills, I imagine.
I think you're correct. Yes, very different set of ball playing skills. But I think the trend in the NRL at the moment is towards what they would term more mobile forwards. In other words, forwards who can get out and run hard, run fast, pass the ball, things like that. And oftentimes these forwards tend to be on the smaller end of the forward packs. And so gone are the days of guys like Christian Welsh, for example, from Melbourne, or even someone like a Junior Paulo, who's very much developed his game since then. But gone are the days of those guys. Even someone like Gordon Tallis just running the ball up into the line repetitively over and over and over and over again. And now it's these smaller guys who run hard, run fast. They come on later on in the game or later on in the half, and they potentially disrupt teams with their fast footwork and things like that. Yes. And so I think there's more of a trend towards that. And I think Payton was one of the earliest observers of that, being a forward himself. And so what he saw in Ruben Cotter was a young fella who was playing hooker, who's still, he's still a forward. The hookers still slot in the forwards, but as an undersized forward, had the potential to put on a few kilos and muscle up against some of the big boys. And you're right, it's done really well for him.
Yeah, it was a good pick. It's worked so very well.
Now captain of the club,
it probably
wouldn't have.
I was just going to say, it probably helps too, having a guy like Jason Taumalolo to run against.
Yeah, they're trying to develop it with Jason Taumalolo as well. He's always had a bit of agility on his feet, but I noticed, I think it was 2 years ago, they were trying to develop a bit of a passing game, and there was one in particular, I can't remember the game, but he threw a ball half the width of the field.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And I haven't seen it very often, but I was thinking, oh, well, that'd be interesting. You're thinking, oh, how do we wrap this guy up? We make sure and then all of a sudden the ball comes popping out. You've got 4 people trying to cover him, and then there's gaps around him.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of potential for that.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. it was a tough time those 3 years away from footy. I was just very grateful that I had the support of the club, my family, my wife. Now she was with me right at the start, so she's been great, and I'm just very fortunate. Here.
And we've also got to talk about the mullet that he rocks.
Next topic.
It's quite a distinctive hairstyle that he's got, and quite amazing.
It's
I don't know. It might not be the right thing for me to say, but I've always thought that it looked awful. But it is him, and if he's happy with it, well, my opinion doesn't matter.
I mean,
this one
look at the plus
does
side.
look a little neater.
It does, and look at the plus side. You have less. You have to use less sunscreen when you play outside. So
yeah. Except that he then goes and shaves the sides. It's like,
well, that's
hang
true.
on.
So kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
It would seem so, but I guess it's his look. That's what he wants.
Being here 6 years on, to be able to have this opportunity is something that I'm very excited about, and I'm really can't wait.
Tommy, Jonathan Thurston was 23 when he captained his first game for the club. You'll be 22.
And the other thing that I want to talk about, the potential for this being an incredibly good move for the club. There are a fair few young players at the club, or at least they were a couple of years ago. They're still on the younger side. And giving these guys who have worked their butts off the last 2 years, the failure of the Cowboys last year wasn't because these two didn't pull their weight. And so they have earned the captaincy, and the energy, the commitment that they bring to the game. I think rewarding them with the captaincy has great potential for saying to the rest of the team, these are the men to look up to. This is what we want you to aspire to as well. This is the standard that has been set. This is what our club is about. Not that it's guaranteed to work, but...
No, I think you're right. Recognizing in particular Tommy Dearden, but Ruben Cotter as well, for their incredibly hard work, making it to where they are now, I think is a really good move, and speaks volumes to younger players that, if you come up, you've got leadership opportunities waiting you.
Yeah.
3 days shy of your 23rd birthday, so that will make you the youngest captain in club history. How does that make you feel when you hear that?
Yeah, it's pretty special. I think when you look back at the history of the players that have captained this club, there's been some great captains, and to be able to now fill that role and be after those players is something that I'm really excited about, and to do it alongside Rubes is something I'm really looking forward to. And yeah, it's going to be a special moment, and hopefully we can have some success here at the club for a long period of time.
Rubes, you're lucky to be in a position not a lot of new leaders are, and the fact that Jason, Chad will still be in this building next year. How beneficial is that going to be for you two as young leaders in 2024?
Yeah, it's been very beneficial already. Sort of this training period pre-Christmas and post-Christmas has been great to sort of lean on and learn off Chaddy and Jace. They're both great leaders in their own ways, and
so this has the potential to work against the Cowboys. I do see the potential for this being a good move, but I also see the possibility of how are Rubes and Tommy going to stand up to Jace and Chad if they need to, encourage them to do better or something. Like, stand up to them might not be the right way to say it, but do you see any problems with that?
Potentially. I think I think Peyton set a pretty good culture in the team that everyone knows what to expect and when to expect it. So I would imagine that these two older blokes in Chad Townsend and Jason Tamalolo would be going, you know what, if we're not shaping up, yeah, please tell us, get rid of us, dump us if it's in the best interest of the team. I would imagine that they would probably be the first two guys to put their hands up and say that. And so when you have, Dearden, Cotter, these guys coming alongside them and saying, you know what, you guys need to, improve, lift your game up a little bit, they will be more inclined to listen, because both Ruben Cotter and Tom Dearden have garnered a lot of respect and with their work ethic and the amount of stuff they do both on and off the field that is really quite good. So it has the potential to blow up if either of the two senior men let their egos get in the way, but I don't necessarily see it being a major downfall.
Yeah. Do you think there's possibility for these younger guys being intimidated? They were their captains previously, and they might not be, used to or in the right head mindset to step into the role to say, look, we're here to lead this thing. They might not even think of it. I guess that's a transition that needs to occur.
Yeah, it is. I think, though, the trend in leadership these days tends to be towards those who are quieter and demonstrate with leadership with their actions rather than with their words. And it always used to be, I very much grew up in an era when leadership was either given to you. You were either appointed a leader, whether that be in a church or a school or a sporting club or whoever it was, or whatever situation it was, or you were the loudest person at the table, or you just had the most experience or whatever it was. And so because of that, it meant that and now I think the pendulum is very much swinging back the other way, in that it's largely based on what you do. And actually, the more you shut up and do your job, probably the more likely you are going to be to show off your leadership potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting this year, and I've still got a lot to learn, and I'm just excited to be doing it with Matt as well. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunities to learn this year. And Chad's he's a great leader and someone that I often go to already. So yeah.
How much does that mean to you, Tommy, that you'll have those two shoulders plus Macca and other guys to lean on in your first year of captaincy?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really great for me and Rubes. We're lucky that we're now transitioning into that leadership role while still having great leaders at our club. And I know the blokes you mentioned in Chatty, Jace and Macca, they're so helping with us going into this role. And I know they're just going to be shoulders to lean on, and we're going to get so much advice from them in this transition period.
Just finally for you both, Rubes, how do you want our members and fans to view this club under your captaincy?
I want us to be viewed as winners. Obviously, hardworking, an effort-based sort of team, and a resilient bunch as well. I think the people of North Queensland are, in the face of adversity, they've sort of banded together, and they're a very resilient community. So, us to represent this community the same way, and just giving it our all every time we go out there.
Same question to you, Tommy.
Yeah, we can tell we're basically on the same page. I think my answer is very similar. We want to be viewed as a team that just never lets each other down and doesn't let the North Queensland region down. And yeah, we know that the people in North Queensland are very resilient and tough people, and I think that's how we want to be viewed as a footy team.
Thanks, boys. Good luck.
Excellent. Well, that gives me more good feelings than concern for what this year might bring. I think overall this has the potential to be a very good move. I think you're right. It depends on how people take it, how Chad and Jace support this new leadership, and if everyone makes it about the Cowboys winning and what's best for the club, I think the Cowboys are in a really good place this year. So there's a few other things we can talk about. We haven't talked on this stream yet about the Cowboys had a really good 2022 and at best a mediocre 2023. You and I have discussed this offline a fair bit, but I think it'd be good to dig into that a bit. And based on that history, what our guess is for this year might bring. I'll kick it off with, it seems to me that one of the reasons that 2022 worked so well was there was a fairly united start to the year. All the club was available, all the team was available for the pre-season, and they worked together on that. Whereas in 2023, it was a very disrupted pre-season with a lot of the major players in the team unavailable playing international rugby league. And so it was a very disjointed pre-season. And it seems to me the club, that the team never got that sorted. Occasionally they would get together and have a really good game, and then they seem to go back to, okay, we're sorted now, we can relax, and then lose the next game. But I think you've got concerns that there might be other things going on. I don't know if you have any ideas, but yeah, I'd like to discuss that. What should we expect this year?
Yeah, it's an interesting it's an interesting one, because I think on one hand, you can peer into your crystal ball and make prognostications for your team's future, but it really depends on a few factors, doesn't it? I think one of my big concerns is what I'd call roster stagnation. A lot of these guys have been with each other for years now. For some people, they've been together for 3 or 4 years. And after a while, when you hear, after a while, a team just needs a bit of a refresh, a bit of a reset. Keep some of your core players in place by all means, but then reset, refresh, revamp the setup, bring in some younger guys. I think what the Cowboys have done really well, what they did really, really well in 2022 was bring along a lot of these younger guys in who were just starting off with some older players. The problem is that in 2023, a lot of the older players started to play like they were old players. And so you had guys like Chad Townsend who hardly ever engaged the line. He was one of the he for halfback, he hardly engaged the line at all. In fact, very seldom did he even poke his nose into the line and then pass the ball. You watch, that was Jonathan Thurston's signature move, right? He'd engage the line and then dummy and then either go through or pass to someone else. Mm-hmm. Chad Townsend hardly ever did that last season. And when your halfback is predictable, it makes it so much harder for everyone else around you to play off that, to build off that.
Yeah.
The other one would be injuries. We've had a fairly good run in the last couple of seasons with injuries, and I kind of feel, as much as I don't believe in karma, I think that there's a certain point in time when injuries do come back. When you do have a season where it's horrific, where you have a lot of season-ending or long-term injuries. Last year, Ruben Cotter missed significant time because, but was in and out of the team for all sorts of things. Jason Tamalolo missed a fair chunk of time in the middle of the season as well. They had, but they were really the only two kind of significant guys who were in and out throughout the season, aside from just a few fringe players. So I do very much feel that, and so they really had no excuse not to have done better last season. And I guess the third one would just be some minor improvements. You look at the top. We're talking offline about this, but the Cowboys ended up in the middle of the pack for the vast majority of the stats in the NRL last season. So if you have a look at things like passing meters and things like that, the number of times they engaged the line, for example, they were smack bang in the middle of the pack, and in some respects they were right at the bottom. Like they had the second fewest number of offloads of anyone in the NRL. And so I would love to see, so I think for them to take the next step in 2023, there's some improvements that can be made, with their offloading. Let's engage the line a little bit more and then offload the ball. You look at how that works for Parramatta and the Sharks and Penrith and teams like that. Let's hold on to the ball a little bit more and not give away stupid penalties. Those are the kinds of things that I would like to be seeing, that I'd like to see them do on a more regular basis and really take that next step forward that they probably haven't taken for the last couple of years.
So it's interesting, 2022, both Scott Drinkwater and Tom Dearden were being considered as the 5'8". And Tom Dearden started the year as 5'8", and Scott Drinkwater was 18th man in the first game. And they had Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow as the fullback. And then he got injured, and Scott Drinkwater came in as the fullback and had quite a standout year. And Hamiso had a lot of trouble coming back into the team. They were trying, where do we fit him in now? And so they were bringing him off the bench as an impact player. They were replacing Peter Hiku with Hamiso. And then they offloaded him, or, he got offered a position at the Dolphins. And so we didn't have him in 2022. But you were discussing the idea of there being a change in the halves. And I've seen some talk about Tom Dearden becoming our half. So what do you think about that? Is Chad Townsend going to be eased out this year? Is that a plan for next year? Who are our halves going to be if that occurs?
Well, this is the final year of Chad Townsend's contract, thank goodness. And so I think, look, I was never a fan of the move to bring Chad Townsend north. I've never been a fan of his. And I've only mildly warmed up to him since he's been up in the tropics. But I think what I could potentially see happening is, I don't think it'll be this season, but I think it'll be next, where he gets relegated maybe to 18th man, maybe to even the number 14, to come in off the bench and be an older, wiser, more experienced head to come in the last seconds, the last few minutes of a tight match or whatever it is, and provide some leadership. Maybe he is, the kind of guy who, who can be the 18th man and can come onto the sideline and there and just be that sounding board for some of these players, to bounce off. I don't think it'll be this year, though, unless something dramatic happens and, he goes down. We talked about injuries earlier, but, if he goes down with an injury and Jake Clifford comes in, or they move Tommy over to into 7 and bring Clifford into the 6, and they both go really well together. Maybe we do see it sooner rather than later, but I think that next year they'll probably offer him a reduced deal. He'll come back on that, and will provide, stay and provide some leadership to the club, and then retire in 2025. He doesn't retire at the end of this year.
Yeah, so you think that Jake Clifford will be moving into the halves? Do you think Tom Dearden is more likely to be the halfback, move from 5'8" to halfback, and Jake Clifford to 5'8", or that Jake Clifford will come in as the halfback?
Clifford has played 5'8" for a lot of his career, so he knows that. I think Dearden at this stage has showcased more of his talents as a 5'8". My worry is that they have effectively set themselves up with 2 5'8" and no halves. What I could see happening, and they have a couple of really good young halves coming through their system. In the likes of Jake Burke, for example, who's one to keep an eye on for this year, along with one or two others as well. But I could potentially see them moving Dearden over to 7, but I'm not sure that he can read the game. And maybe, I'm happy to stand corrected on this. But I'm not sure he's got the game reading abilities that you need of an elite number 7, but I could be wrong.
And I think it would be a big change in style for the Cowboys as well. Dearden's a far more active half than Chad Townsend is. And so the Cowboys would have to adjust to that if they did go that direction. One of the things that I think Chad Townsend did bring to the Cowboys is that in 2021, Cowboys had a lot of talent. They had a lot of creative players, but they didn't really have a stabilizing. They didn't have someone that was a good game manager. And yeah, Chad Townsend's not the best halfback that the game has ever seen. He's not an especially creative player. He's not. He's not a ball running half, and he's pretty well known as that. But I do think he brought a lot of stability to the Cowboys. There's a lot of creativity around him, and so he was able to bring the stability the Cowboys needed, so that creativity could be managed a bit better, and there could be someone controlling and I can't think of the right word, but that creativity wasn't so chaotic. But then, last year there wasn't that. That stabilizing force seemed to disappear somewhere.
It went from being stabilizing to being stagnating, I think, is what happened.
Yeah. And I think the Cowboys, I don't know, they didn't get, I think because a lot of their creative players, a lot of their best players were playing in international rugby league, they didn't get the rest that they needed, and so they were a bit worn out, potentially. Well, we'll see how this year goes.
Yeah. You're right to an extent, but the vast majority of their spine played no representative football.
Yeah.
So their spine had no excuse. Townsend, Dearden, Drinkwater, Robson, they didn't have an excuse not to come in and be prepared and click with each other. So I do think one of the Cowboys' weaknesses is actually Scott Drinkwater. And I'll tell you why. Because he's a terrible defender. He doesn't.
That's why Tom Dearden was put in as 5'8" in 2022, because of his defensive skills. And then in 2022, he showed what an awesome attacking player he could be. But even if you watch him chase, one of the fullback's main jobs is when someone makes a line break, they've got to chase him down and tackle him, right? 9 times out of 10, the player would either beat him to the line, so outdo him in pace, or he would get across there but would make such a weak tackle on him that there's no chance of stopping him anyway. So whereas you watch guys like, as much as I can't stand him, Latrell Mitchell
or someone like even someone like a Hamiso Tabuai Fido or a James Tedesco. You know, what makes someone like James Tedesco so great is that he goes in and he puts in the effort on defense. So he might not be the quickest bloke out there, but when he gets across, he's going to make sure that he gets tackled and he stays tackled.
Yeah, James Tedesco is bigger, but Hamiso is not big, but he's a good tackler. I think Hamiso has a good technique that he uses to tackle.
Yeah.
I wonder too, because, you know, Chad has this, I can't remember what they call it, but he does this live streaming and they have this golf club and they have, you know, they like to go golfing, him and Drinky and Val Holmes. I can't remember who else is in their little group. I wonder how much they get distracted by that. It doesn't seem to affect Val, but I've got a feeling that maybe Chad is overcommitted in extracurricular activities.
Yeah, maybe.
And I think, I think it'd be good if they spend a little bit more time focusing on the Cowboys rather than this side hustle that he's got going. You know, and if the Cowboys were playing well, then I wouldn't criticize that. But the Cowboys didn't play well last year, so maybe that's a distraction, Chad. But yeah,
I mean,
what
the
do
poor
I
man
know?
does have four. Well, I was just, the poor man does have 4 children as well, and I'm sure that he probably needs a little bit of a break from them and the Cowboys from time to time. So,
Yeah,
I suppose if that's his break, I don't begrudge him his opportunity to take a break.
yeah, but maybe that's not the best way to take a break.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Anyway, that might be worth considering if any Cowboys staff watch this. But the captaincy's been taken away from him, so maybe that will resolve the issue. We shall see. Now we've got, I was planning on going for about an hour. We've got just under 15 minutes left. Do we want to discuss the Maroons before we wrap this up? So Cameron Smith has retired as one of the coaches for the Maroons, and Matt Ballon has stepped up in his place. It was hilarious to me because Matt Ballon was behind Cameron Smith in his playing days. He was the second choice hooker for the Maroons, and now he's the second choice coach for the Maroons. Forwards.
It was rather ironic, wasn't it?
So I don't think that much is really going to change. Matt Ballon was already there. I think the Maroons will continue to have, good potential for having a good year again this year.
I think the thing that's going to change is the most of the Blues, and I'm probably a little bit more wary of them this season with Michael Maguire being their head coach than with Freddie. You know, at least with Freddie, you're guaranteed one of two things: either using Eastern mysticism to select the players, or just having a complete, or just putting a bunch of players up on his dartboard and throwing darts at him until he got 17 players. That's what it seemed like from time to time, right? So,
well, it was fascinating to me last year, game 1. Oh, Nico Hines. Yep. No, he's vital to the, and he plays one game. He gets put in as a center, which that didn't, what he was doing on the bench, until they needed a center. Yeah. I don't understand. And then Nico Hines is gone for the rest of for the next 2 games. It's like, what on earth is going on here? There doesn't seem to be a plan. Anyway,
between that and playing Damien Cook at center in game 2, that was both of those were rather amusing. Yeah, I bizarre. I think for me, I think for me, you're right. I don't think there's going to be too much change from the status quo as far as the Maroons go. I do wonder if they're losing a lot of the tactical nous that Cam Smith brought. I don't know that I know for a fact that Matt Ballon can't replace that. But I mean, that said, they have Billy Slater and they have Jonathan Thurston in the coaching side as well. And there's plenty of tactical nous between the two of them. I am really curious to see how Madge Maguire motivates the Blues, how he goes about motivating his players, because, you know, in the past he's received a lot of criticism for being old school and using old school methods, and players don't want to play for him because of his methods and things like that. And so, you know, I'm really, really curious, you know, to see how he and then he went last season and joined another old school coach in Ricky Stewart, right? So I am very curious to see how he's going to go about motivating the Blues players, and most of all, who he's going to select. I think he's going to be much more thoughtful in his selections. But I also think too he'll be able to get the most out of guys like James Tedesco, who just seemed that he just had shut off for games 1 and 2. Guys like Latrell Mitchell, he might actually want to play a game for them. You know, he might actually be able to get you know, to actually bring the best out of some of these guys and start thinking beyond just, you know, the little enclave of Penrith and Western Sydney.
Yeah, and constantly changing every single game what the plan is. And you're not building towards anything. When Freddie first started coaching New South Wales, he seemed to be saying the right things for New South Wales to build a New South Wales spirit, for them to be proud of their state and you know, to want to compete for the 80 minutes, and you know, to build that sort of passion for playing for New South Wales that Queensland has. But then the last 2 years, I haven't seen that. It seems to be chop and change, and there's no loyalty. There's no plan. So it'd be nice, you know, as much as I love New South Wales losing, I do want it to be competitive. I want to beat New South Wales at their best, not because they're not their best.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to know that we've beaten them because we've had to lift, and we've actually beaten New South Wales. Not, well, of course they weren't going to win. There was no good direction.
I think
that's less meaningful.
Yeah. Look, you know, I think you're right, but you raise a really interesting point with the whole idea of the spirit, you know, of playing for Queensland, playing for New South Wales. And living in New South Wales, I can tell you that outside of state of origin, there are very, very few times when New South Welshmen ever speak about being from New South Wales. It's largely, I'm from Sydney, I'm from Dubbo, or I'm from Orange or Armidale, or wherever, you know, wherever it is, whatever little country town they're from. Whereas when you talk to, and I won't use Queenslanders for an example, when you talk to Western Australians, for example, their first response will be, I'm from WA, I'm from Western Australia. To them, Western Australia is far more important than being from, you know, Bidjambup or whatever it is. You know, they are in the middle of, you know, wherever they're from, they're out in the middle of whoop whoop. And the same is true for Queenslanders as well. You know, if you're a Queenslander, so I'm from Queensland. That's the first thing that they will say, and I think that that's a difference. I'm not sure if it, you know, I'd be interested to know how Brisbaneites view Queensland compared to North Queenslanders, for example, you know, people that have grown up and lived and been raised in Brisbane their whole life, because I think you'd find they'd probably be more like Sydney-siders in that regards. But there still seems to be this general spirit of I'm from Queensland rather than I'm from whatever little place you're from.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think being from Queensland means more to Queenslanders than being from New South Wales means to people from New South Wales. And yeah, it is probably a little bit of a spectrum, but I think I've definitely detected that as well. New South Welshmen don't have that same passion for New South Wales that we do. During Origin, yeah, they start hating Queenslanders, and like they like mocking us and, you know, treating us as though we're stupid and backwards and all of that sort of thing. There's that culture as well. But the passion for their own state doesn't appear to exist. You also raise the difference between Brisbane and North Queensland. Well, I've always, one of the things that I love to say is, oh, I'm from Queensland, like when I lived in WA, or when I visit New South Wales and things like that. I'm from Queensland. But worse than that, I'm from North Queensland.
Yes. Yes.
And
exactly.
Because to me, being from North Queensland is as much a part of me as being from Queensland. And, you know, if you want to mock Queenslanders, well, I'm from North Queensland. We're way worse than just being from anywhere in Queensland.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about how backwards Queenslanders are, okay, well, you might as well mock me for being a North Queenslander then.
And I wonder, you know, if a lot of that in the rugby league sense is due to the fact that New South Wales has no rugby league teams from country areas. So if you consider the Penrith Panthers, right, someone like Isaiah Yeo, he grew up in Dubbo his whole entire life, and he technically represents Dubbo by playing for the Panthers. But then the chief players on their team, your Jerome Luais, your Brian To'os, your, you know, Stephen Crichton, they all live 15 minutes down the road in St. Mary's and Bidwell and those areas, which are, you know, not great areas, but they're happy, and they're actually part of a completely different council than Penrith is anyway. And so, whereas if you look at North Queensland, or even a place like Newcastle, let's take the Cowboys out of it. Let's look at Newcastle. A lot of the Newcastle juniors from the Central Coast, like Macquarie, Newcastle, even a little bit north up to Raymond Terrace and Coffs, that area, they all want to play for the Newcastle Knights. That's their dream, because that's the side they've grown up supporting their whole lives.
Yeah, that's their local team.
And I suppose on a more, if we take it more to on a spiritual point for just a moment, we should have the same feeling about being a Christian. We're not just a Christian. We're not just a Christian. We are followers of Jesus, you know. And there's all sorts of different stripes and brands and denominations of being Christian, and there's lots of different stripes and brands and denominations of followers of Jesus. But as long as you are committed to living out the gospel, regardless of your you know, of whether you listen to the right type of music or read the right translation, whatever it is, as long as you're committed to following Jesus, in my book, you know, you're a Christian. Yeah.
Yeah. And that needs to be our priority. And it's interesting that the analogy that you can make, the connection you can make. So Queenslanders come from all over Queensland. You might be a country Queenslander. You might have grown up in Brisbane. You might have grown up west of Brisbane. You might have grown up in Rocky or Serena, or you might be from the far north, but you're a Queenslander. And so where you come from in Queensland is put aside for that higher purpose. And yes, as Christians, we can have these debates about all sorts of topics within Christianity, but so long as it is within Christianity, then we keep Christ in first place. One difference between football and, you know, spiritual things is there are people that claim to be Christians and they're not. It's a bit hard to make the same claim about people claim to be Queenslanders and they're not. You wouldn't claim to be a Queenslander unless you are. But there are people who claim to be Christians because they want to pretend that they are serving God, that they do have the truth. And so we do need to be careful of that. But if it is actually a Christian, then the disagreements that we have on, you know, numerous topics need to be seen as the secondary topics that they are. And a lot of my followers are people that are engaged in those debates about what is the truth of the gospel. And a lot of these, and I'm engaged in them as well. What is the truth? And unfortunately, what I find is that a lot of Christians aren't interested in discussing a difference of opinion that someone else has with humility. And I have tried on a number of issues to do that. But unfortunately, so many Christians who disagree with my position don't want to treat me with the respect that that we should be treating each other. And that's very, very unfortunate. And so the cause of Christ is being harmed when it comes to that. But it is a good reminder. I've got to remind myself as well, keep Christ first, because that's the most important thing. I really appreciate you joining me, Matt. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts. We've definitely hit our hour mark.
Yes.
And I was going to say, I'm glad you raised that topic.
Yes. Now, the only thing I would just conclude with is I think regardless of whether you support whatever footy side you support, whether you're a Queenslander or a New South Welshman, at the end of the day, we're all Australians. And, you know, Australians can be from all stripes and colors. And my neighbors next door are Sikh, and they're proudly Australian just as much as I am. And so and so just like Christians can be from all over, anywhere, any place, as long as they affirm the gospel, the tenets that, you know, that Jesus, you know, that we're all sinners. Jesus died on the cross and rose again on the third day, and it's now living forever in heaven. As long as they hold that as their center point, then I'm more than happy to call them my brother or sister in Christ.
I was going to, I was going to show you the screen that I use, my 4-point outline of the gospel.
I do have to run off, but it was a great discussion, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. And I hope that people enjoyed this. And if you don't know Jesus Christ, that is far more important than anything else that we've discussed. There is a simple outline of the gospel, and that's the end of the show. We might do another one of these, and I'll catch you next time, Matt.